The year was 2347. Humanity had spread across 17 colony worlds, but Earth remained the heart of everything. 12 billion people called it home. It was where the United Terran Federation had its capital. It was where human history lived and breathed. Every colony looked back to Earth as the mother of all worlds. 30 years ago, humanity had made first contact with the Velkari Dominion. The Velkari were tall creatures with gray skin and 4 eyes. They ruled over 200 species, across thousands of star systems. They had welcomed humans into the galactic community, or so it seemed. Humans believed they had found friends among the stars. They were wrong. High Arbiter Kethvan stood in the Great Council chamber of the Dominion. He was old, even by Velkari standards, and he had watched humanity for 3 decades. What he saw frightened him. Other species took thousands of years to colonize a few worlds. Humans did it in centuries. Other species adopted Dominion technology and used it as they were taught. Humans took it apart, changed it, made it better. They asked questions no one had asked in 10,000 years. Kethvan saw the future clearly. In 100 years, maybe 200, humans would surpass the Velkari. They would challenge the Dominion's rule. They would change everything. He could not allow this. The council voted in secret. No records were kept. The decision was called corrective integration. It was a clean name for a dirty thing. It meant genocide. Admiral Helena Vance was 53 years old. She had served in the Terran fleet for 30 years. Now she commanded Earth's orbital defense grid from a station high above the Pacific Ocean. It was a quiet posting. Nobody expected trouble. The Dominion was a friend. On the morning of June 15th, everything changed. The alarm screamed to life. Vance ran to the command center and looked at the screens. Her blood turned to ice. 300 Velkari dreadnoughts had appeared from hyperspace. 12,000 smaller ships surrounded them. It was the largest fleet she had ever seen. There was no warning, no demand for surrender, no declaration of war. The Velkari simply began firing. Kinetic rounds the size of buildings fell from orbit. They moved faster than anything human technology could stop. The first impacts hit Asia. Mumbai vanished in a pillar of fire that reached into the sky. Beijing followed. Then Tokyo. Then Sydney. Vance shouted orders. Her defense platforms fired back. They destroyed a few dozen enemy ships. It meant nothing. The Velkari had thousands more. She watched Sao Paulo disappear. Then London. Then New York. The oceans began to boil along the coastlines. Dust and smoke rose to block the sun. The planet that had given birth to humanity was dying. 4 billion people died in the first 6 hours. Vance knew her station would not survive much longer. Enemy ships were closing in. She had only minutes left. She used them to send a message to every human colony in the galaxy. "This is Admiral Helena Vance," she said. Her voice was steady even as tears ran down her face. "The Velkari have attacked Earth without warning. 4 billion are dead. The planet is burning. They came to destroy us. Do not let them succeed. Protect yourselves. Remember us. Avenge us." She transmitted everything. The footage of burning cities, the recordings of the attack, the proof of what the Dominion had done. Then the enemy ships found her station. Admiral Vance died at her post, still fighting. On the colony world of New Geneva, Director Marcus Chen was in his office when the transmission arrived. He was a tall man with gray hair and tired eyes. He had spent his life building things, trade agreements, infrastructure, peaceful relations with alien species. He watched the footage 3 times. He saw Mumbai burn. His wife had been visiting her parents there. He saw Sao Paulo vanish. His children were studying at the university there. He saw the whole world die. For a long moment, he could not breathe. The pain was too great. It filled his chest like a physical weight. He wanted to scream. He wanted to cry. He wanted to close his eyes and never open them again. But Marcus Chen was not a man who gave up. He took a deep breath. Then another. He wiped his eyes and stood up straight. There would be time for grief later. Right now, his people needed him. Across the 17 colony worlds, 13 billion humans watched the same footage. They saw their homeworld burn. They lost family, friends, everything they held dear. The Velkari expected this to break them. They expected humans to scatter in terror, to beg for mercy, to accept their place as a conquered species. They did not understand humanity at all. Within hours, the surviving colonial governors gathered for an emergency meeting. Their faces filled screens across a dozen worlds. Some were crying. Some were shaking with rage. All of them looked to Marcus Chen. He stood before them and spoke. "The Valkyrie believe they have solved a problem," he said. "They believe that burning our world will make us weak. They believe that killing 4 billion of us will make the rest of us afraid. They are wrong." He paused. His eyes were hard as stone. "From this moment forward, humanity has only one purpose. We will make the Dominion pay for what they have done. We will teach every species in this galaxy that genocide is not a strategy. It is a death sentence." The Valkyrie wanted to destroy a threat. Instead, they have created one. The governors listened. One by one, they nodded. "We will need time," Chen continued. "We will need to build. We will need to prepare. The Dominion has ruled for 10,000 years. They are strong, but they have never faced an enemy like us. They have never faced a species with nothing left to lose." A governor from New Stockholm spoke up. "What do we do first?" Chen's answer was simple. "We go silent. No transmissions, no trade, no contact with anyone outside human space. Let the Dominion think they have won. Let them believe we are broken and dying, and while they celebrate their victory, we will become something they never imagined." He looked at each face on the screens. "We will become their worst nightmare." The chamber erupted. Not with despair, not with fear, with cold, unified rage. Every governor, every official, every human who heard those words felt the same thing. They had been given a wound that would never fully heal. But from that wound would come strength. The Valkyrie had killed 4 billion humans. They would learn to regret every single one. 5 years passed after the burning of Earth. In the great halls of the Dominion, High Arbiter Kethvan sat on his throne and smiled. The human problem had been solved. The surviving colonies had gone completely silent. No signals came from their space. No ships crossed their borders. They were dying slowly, just as he had planned. He reported to the council that humanity was contained. "Give them another generation," he said, "and they would fade away entirely." The other species in the Dominion accepted this. A few felt uneasy. The insectoid Kreeth remembered how fast humans learned things. The aquatic Martian wondered what humans might do with all that time and anger. But most believed the High Arbiter. Why would they doubt him? The Dominion had ruled for 10,000 years. One small species could not threaten that. They were making a terrible mistake. Behind the wall of silence, humanity had transformed completely. Director Marcus Chen had created something new. He called it the Terran Vengeance Compact. Every colony answered to it. Every factory, every shipyard, every school now served one purpose: revenge. The old economy was gone. People did not work for money anymore. They worked for survival. They worked for justice. Farmers grew food to feed soldiers. Engineers built weapons instead of consumer goods. Teachers taught children mathematics through targeting problems. How far away is the enemy ship? How fast is it moving? Where should we aim? Even the artists served the cause. Painters created propaganda posters showing Earth before the burning. Writers composed poems about the 4 billion dead. Musicians wrote songs of remembrance and rage. Every human, from the oldest grandmother to the youngest child, had a role to play. Dr. Yuki Tanaka was a small woman with sharp eyes and a brilliant mind. Before the war, she had studied alien technology as a hobby. Now she led Project Prometheus, humanity's most secret program. Her team worked in underground laboratories, hidden from any Dominion sensors. They took apart captured Valkyrie technology piece by piece. They studied every component. They learned every system. And then they discovered something amazing. Dominion technology had not changed in millennia. The Valkyrie had perfected their machines thousands of years ago, and then stopped improving them. They saw no need for innovation. Their ships, their weapons, their computers were the best in the galaxy. Why make them better? Humans thought differently. Humans always asked, what if we tried this instead? Within 3 years, Tanaka's team had created weapons the Dominion could not imagine. Their new ships used a different kind of faster-than-light travel. Dominion sensors could not detect them. They could jump into places that should have been impossible, like deep inside a gravity well or right next to an enemy station. They built kinetic accelerators that made Valkyrie weapons look like toys. They designed shields that worked on principles the Dominion had never discovered. And they created something even more dangerous. A computer virus that could hide inside Dominion networks for years, waiting for the signal to activate. Tanaka called it the Prometheus Protocol. It would be humanity's secret weapon. Commander Alexei Volkov was a ghost. He led the first human strike teams into Dominion space. His soldiers were the best humanity had. They trained for years in secret. They learned to move without being seen, to fight without making noise, to kill without leaving evidence. Their ships were small and fast and invisible to enemy sensors. They would slip across the border into Dominion territory. They would find isolated merchant vessels or small patrol ships. They would board them silently. They would kill everyone aboard and take everything useful. Then they would disappear. The Dominion noticed ships going missing. They blamed pirates. They blamed navigation errors. They blamed internal disputes among their client species. They never suspected humans. How could they? Humans were broken and defeated, hiding in their little colonies, waiting to die. Each mission taught Volkov more about the enemy. He learned how Dominion ships worked. He learned their patrol routes and communication codes. He mapped their supply lines and identified their weak points. Every piece of information went back to Chen and Tanaka. The picture grew clearer every month. On what remained of Earth, a different kind of resistance survived. The Valkyrie had turned the burned planet into a mining operation. They extracted rare minerals from the scorched ground. They built processing facilities in the ruins of human cities. Valkyrie workers and soldiers walked on the ashes of 4 billion people and thought nothing of it. Elena Vasquez had been a schoolteacher before the war. She had hidden in underground shelters when the bombardment came. She had survived on stored food and recycled water while the world died above her. When the Valkyrie arrived to claim the planet, she and a few hundred others were still alive. They could have surrendered. They could have accepted slavery. Instead, they chose to fight. Vasquez organized the survivors into small cells. They moved through the ruins at night. They stole supplies from Valkyrie camps. They sabotaged mining equipment. They killed soldiers when they could and vanished before anyone could catch them. But their most important mission was planting beacons, small devices hidden in the rubble of dead cities. Each beacon was a marker, a signal that said, "We are still here. Earth is not forgotten." When the time came for humanity's return, those beacons would guide them home. The 5th year ended with a gift for Director Chen. Volkov's teams captured a Valkyrie intelligence officer. Under interrogation, the officer revealed something important. The Dominion believed humanity was no longer a threat. They had reduced their patrols along the border. They had moved most of their fleet to other regions. They thought the war was over. Chen smiled when he heard this. It was the first time he had smiled in 5 years. He called a meeting of his commanders. Admiral James Okonkwo was there. Dr. Tanaka was there. Volkov appeared on a screen from his hidden ship somewhere in enemy territory. "The Dominion is complacent," Chen told them. "They believe their own lies. They think we are weak and dying. In 2 years, we will show them how wrong they are." Tanaka reported that the Prometheus Protocol was ready. Her virus had been spreading through Dominion networks for 18 months. It infected millions of systems. It sat dormant, invisible, waiting. Okonkwo reported that the first Vengeance fleet was nearly complete. 200 warships, each one more advanced than anything the Dominion had ever seen. Volkov reported that he had identified the perfect first target, Kyrath Station, a major Dominion military hub, home to 40 warships and 2 million enemy personnel. It had never been attacked. Its defenses were ceremonial. The Valkyrie there felt completely safe. Chen nodded. "Kyrath Station will be our message to the galaxy. They killed 4 billion of us. They thought that would be the end. They were wrong." He looked at his commanders. 2 more years of preparation. 2 more years of patience. And then, we begin. In the silent darkness of human space, factories hummed. Shipyards glowed with welding torches. Soldiers trained and studied and waited. 13 billion humans dreamed of one thing. Revenge was coming. 7 years had passed since Earth burned. Admiral James Okonkwo stood on the bridge of the TVC Remembrance. He was a tall man with dark skin and calm eyes. His father had died on Earth. His mother had died on Earth. His brothers and sisters and childhood friends had all died on Earth. He carried their memory like a weight on his shoulders. Around him, the first Vengeance fleet waited in the darkness between stars. 17 ships. It seemed like such a small number against the vast Dominion. But these were not ordinary ships. Dr. Tanaka had designed them herself. They carried weapons the enemy had never seen. They moved in ways the enemy thought impossible. Kyrath Station floated ahead of them. It was enormous. A ring of metal and light spinning slowly in space. 40 Velkari warships were docked there. 2 million soldiers and workers lived inside. It was a symbol of Dominion power. It had never been attacked. Its shields were more for show than protection. Its defense grid was old and poorly maintained. The Velkari there felt safe. They were about to learn a terrible lesson. All ships report ready, Okonkwo's second-in-command said. The admiral nodded. He thought about his father, who had been a teacher. He thought about his mother, who had been a doctor. They had been good people, kind people. They had deserved to grow old and watch their grandchildren play. The Velkari had taken that from them. Begin the attack, Okonkwo said. The 17 human ships activated their drives. They did not approach Kyrath Station slowly from a safe distance. They did not give warning or time to prepare. They jumped directly into the station's defense perimeter. According to Dominion physics, this was impossible. Ships could not exit hyperspace inside a gravity well. Ships could not appear so close to a large structure. The Velkari had believed this for 10,000 years. Humans did not care what the Velkari believed. Alarms screamed across Kyrath Station. Officers ran to their posts. Commanders shouted orders. 40 warships tried to power up their weapons and shields. They were too slow. The human fleet opened fire. Okonkwo's ships used kinetic accelerators that fired projectiles at incredible speeds. They punched through Velkari shields like they were made of paper. Explosions bloomed across the enemy vessels. Reactors overloaded. Hulls tore apart. Ships that had never fired a shot in anger died in seconds. The battle lasted 11 minutes. When it was over, every Velkari warship had been destroyed. Kyrath Station's shields had failed. Its defense grid was silent. 2 million Velkari inside waited for death, but death did not come. Okonkwo broadcast on every frequency. His voice reached every corner of the station. It reached Dominion ships in nearby systems. It reached the ears of species who had lived under Velkari rule for thousands of years. This is Admiral Okonkwo, of the Terran Vengeance Compact, he said. We have not come to negotiate. We have not come to conquer. We have come to teach you the cost of genocide. Kyrath Station is the first lesson. There will be many more. Human soldiers boarded the station. They moved through the corridors in disciplined units. They did not kill civilians. They did not torture prisoners. They secured the station quickly and efficiently. The Velkari personnel were gathered in the main assembly hall. They expected to be executed. They expected to be made examples of. Instead, they were given a choice. You can serve as witnesses, a human officer told them. Go back to Dominion space. Tell everyone what you saw here. Show them that humanity is not dead. Show them that humanity is coming, or you can refuse. And you can die. The choice is yours. Most of them chose to live. They were given small transport ships and sent away. They carried recordings of the battle. They carried images of human technology that should not exist. They carried a message that would shake the Dominion to its core. High Arbiter Kethvan heard the news in his throne room. For the first time in decades, he felt fear. He told himself it was nothing. One lucky attack. One small victory against an unimportant station. He would crush these humans properly this time. He assembled a punitive fleet of 800 warships, the largest fleet the Dominion had sent against any enemy in 1,000 years. Admiral Sithar commanded the fleet. He was old and experienced. He had destroyed rebellions across the galaxy. He expected to find desperate humans making a last stand at their pitiful colonies. The fleet tracked human ship signatures to the Epsilon Eridani system. It was one of humanity's oldest colonies, home to 1 billion people. Sithar expected fierce resistance. He found empty space. The colony was gone. The 1 billion people had vanished. Only a single automated beacon remained, floating where a planet should have been. A recorded message played. You are predictable, a human voice said. We are not. Look homeward. Admiral. Sithar felt his blood run cold. He ordered his fleet to return to Dominion space immediately. It was too late. While 800 Velkari ships chased ghosts, 3 human strike groups had attacked targets across the Dominion. Shipyards burned. Fuel depots exploded. Communication relays went silent. By the time Sithar returned, The Dominion had lost more infrastructure than in a century of minor wars, and the humans had vanished again. No traces, no signals, nothing. The galaxy began to change. Other species watched what humanity had done. The Krith were insects with hive minds. They had served the Dominion for 3,000 years. They remembered their own conquest, their own subjugation. Now they whispered among themselves, "If humans can fight back after losing 4 billion, why can we not fight back too?" The Martian were beings of water and light. They had accepted Dominion rule because they saw no alternative. Now they saw humans refusing to accept anything. They began to wonder if acceptance had been a mistake. Even loyal client species felt doubt. The Dominion had always seemed invincible. Now it seemed vulnerable. One small species had hurt it badly. What else might be possible? Kethvan called an emergency council meeting. He demanded that every available ship be mobilized. The entire military might of the Dominion would be focused on one goal: the complete extermination of humanity. No more half measures. No more assumptions. Humans would be hunted to the last survivor. Every colony would be burned. Every ship would be destroyed. Every trace of human civilization would be erased from the galaxy. The council agreed. They had no choice. If humans could do this to them, they had to be stopped. The alternative was unthinkable. On New Geneva, Director Marcus Chen received intelligence reports about the Dominion's decision. His spies had infiltrated their communications. He knew what was coming. He smiled. This was exactly what he had expected. The Dominion was scared. Scared enemies made mistakes. They committed everything to one strategy. They left themselves vulnerable in other ways. Chen called his commanders together. "They are coming for us with everything they have," he told them. "Good. We want them committed. We want them focused on us. Because while they are looking in one direction, we will strike from another." Admiral Okonkwo nodded. Dr. Tanaka nodded. Commander Volkov, watching from his hidden ship, nodded. The war was far from over. In many ways, it had just begun. But humanity had proven something important. They could hurt the enemy. They could make the Dominion bleed. And they were just getting started. 10 years had passed since Earth burned. The Terran Vengeance fleet gathered in the darkness beyond the last human colony. 400 warships. Each one carried the names of burned cities on its hull. Mumbai, Sao Paulo, London, Tokyo. The dead were remembered on every vessel. Admiral Helena Vance II stood on the bridge of the flagship. She was 35 years old. Her mother had died defending Earth 10 years ago. Her father had died in a later battle. She had inherited her mother's tactical brilliance and her father's patient anger. Today, she would finish what her parents had started. Velkrath Prime filled the viewscreen. The Velkari homeworld, a planet of silver oceans and purple forests. 8 billion Velkari lived there. It was the heart of the Dominion, the seat of their power for 10,000 years. The Dominion had fortified it with everything they had. 3,000 warships surrounded the planet. Orbital defense platforms bristled with weapons that could crack moons. Planetary shields glowed with enough power to stop an asteroid. High Arbiter Kethvan had broadcast to the galaxy that humanity's revenge would end here. He believed it. His admirals believed it. His soldiers believed it. They were wrong. Admiral Vance looked at the enemy fleet. 3,000 ships against her 400. By any normal calculation, she should lose. But nothing about this war was normal. "Dr. Tanaka," she said into the communication system, "is Prometheus ready?" On New Geneva, in a bunker deep underground, Yuki Tanaka sat before a console. She was old now. Her hair was white. Her hands shook slightly, but her mind was as sharp as ever. "Ready," she said. "On your command." Tanaka had spent 10 years preparing this moment. Her virus had spread through every Dominion system. It hid in military networks and civilian infrastructure. It waited in navigation computers and shield generators. Millions of infected systems across the galaxy. All of them sleeping. All of them waiting. "Execute Prometheus protocol," Vance ordered. Tanaka pressed a button. Across Dominion space, everything broke at once. On Velkrath Prime, the orbital defense platforms went dark. Their targeting systems crashed. Their weapons powered down. The operators screamed at their consoles, trying to restore function. Nothing worked. The 3,000 warships lost their navigation. Pilots suddenly could not see where they were or where other ships were. Shields flickered and failed. Weapons systems reported errors, communication arrays filled with static. The Valkyrie fleet was blind, deaf, and helpless. Admiral Vance smiled. All ships attack. The human fleet jumped into the chaos. They knew exactly where every enemy ship was. Their systems worked perfectly. They moved through the blind Valkyrie formation like wolves through sheep. Kinetic rounds tore through unshielded hulls. Human ships danced between confused enemies who fired wildly at nothing. Valkyrie commanders shouted orders that no one could hear. Crews tried to fight back but could not see their targets. The battle lasted 6 hours. When it ended, 2,000 Valkyrie ships were destroyed. The rest had surrendered. The orbital platforms floated dead in space. The planetary shields had collapsed. Velkrath Prime lay open and defenseless. Admiral Vance looked down at the enemy homeworld. She thought about Earth. She thought about Mumbai and Sao Paulo and all the other cities. She thought about 4 billion people who had died screaming. She could do the same thing to Velkrath Prime. Her ships carried enough weapons to burn the planet to ash. 8 billion Valkyrie could die just like 4 billion humans had died. Eye for an eye. Justice. Her hand moved toward the order that would end the Valkyrie species. Then she stopped. She thought about her mother. Helena Vance I had been a good woman. She had believed in justice, not revenge. She had believed that strength meant protecting the weak, not destroying them. If Vance burned this planet, she would become exactly what the Valkyrie were. She would prove that all species were the same. Killers. Monsters. Creatures who destroyed each other without mercy. Humans could be better than that. All ships hold fire, she ordered. Prepare landing forces. We are taking this planet, not destroying it. Her officers looked surprised but obeyed. Within hours, human soldiers walked on Valkyrie soil. They secured government buildings and military bases. They captured the leaders who had ordered Earth's destruction. President Marcus Chen arrived on a diplomatic vessel. He was old now. His hair was completely white. His hands trembled, but his eyes were still hard as stone. He walked into the Dominion Council chamber with human soldiers at his side. The council members sat in their ancient seats, surrounded by enemies. Some looked defiant. Some looked terrified. High Arbiter Kethvan sat on his throne and waited for death. Chen stood before them and spoke. You believed genocide was a strategy, he said. You believed that burning our world would break us. You were wrong. We have won this war. Your fleet is destroyed. Your planet is ours. We could do to you what you did to us. We have the power. We have the cause. He paused. But we will not. The council members stared at him in confusion. Humanity does not seek extermination, Chen continued. We seek justice. And justice requires that you live. You will live with the knowledge of what you did. You will live under rules that you once imposed on others. You will watch us become what you feared. He announced the terms of surrender. The Valkyrie Dominion was dissolved. Every species it had ruled would now be free. The Valkyrie themselves would be confined to their home system for 100 years. They would not be killed. They would be contained. And every year, they would broadcast the truth of what they did to Earth. The whole galaxy would hear it. Future generations would learn it. The Valkyrie would carry their shame forever. High Arbiter Kethvan was brought before a human tribunal. He expected execution. He had prepared himself for a martyr's death. He would die proudly, knowing he had tried to protect his species. The tribunal did not sentence him to death. Instead, he was sentenced to live. He would spend the rest of his life in a comfortable cell, writing a complete history of the Dominion's crimes, not just against humans, against every species they had ever conquered or destroyed. 10,000 years of evil, documented by the one who had led it. His writings would be required reading for every sentient being in the galaxy. President Chen visited him one last time. Death is easy, Chen told him. You gave death to 4 billion of us. We give you something harder. We give you the burden of truth. You will write it all down. You will face what you did, and when you die, centuries from now, your words will still teach the galaxy what happens when a species chooses genocide. Kethvan said nothing. For the first time in his long life, he had no answer. The war was over. Humanity had won not just with weapons, but with choices. They had proven that strength did not require cruelty, that victory did not require revenge, that the cycle of violence that had defined the galaxy for 10,000 years could be broken. Other species watched what humans did. The Krith and the Martian and dozens of others saw a conqueror who chose mercy. They saw a victim who refused to become a monster, and they began to hope that maybe the galaxy could change. Admiral Vance returned to human space a hero, but she did not celebrate. She visited the monument to her mother on New Geneva. She stood there for a long time, looking at the name carved in stone. "We won," she said quietly. "We won and we stayed human. I hope you would be proud." The wind carried her words away, but somehow, she felt that her mother heard them. 20 years had passed since Earth burned. The galaxy was a different place now. The Valkyrie Dominion existed only in history books. In its place, something new had grown. The Terran Ascendancy was not an empire. It was not a dictatorship. It was an alliance of free species, led by humans but ruled by cooperation. President Marcus Chen had retired long ago. He lived quietly on New Geneva, writing his memoirs and watching the sunset. He was 93 years old. His body was frail, but his mind was clear. He had spent his life turning tragedy into triumph. Now he could rest. His successor was President Amara Okonkwo. She was Admiral Okonkwo's daughter. She had grown up during the war years, studying leadership and diplomacy while her father fought battles. Now she led the Ascendancy with a gentle hand and an iron will. Under her guidance, former Dominion species flourished. The Krith built great hive cities and traded freely with their neighbors. The Martian explored the deep oceans of water worlds across the galaxy. Dozens of species who had lived under Valkyrie rule for millennia now governed themselves. The founding principles of the Ascendancy were simple. No species would be corrected. No world would burn as Earth had burned. Humanity's strength would protect the weak, not dominate them. And at the heart of everything was Earth. The planet had been healing slowly for 2 decades. Atmosphere processors cleaned the poisoned air. Engineered bacteria broke down the toxins in the soil. Special organisms restored life to the dead oceans. It was slow work. Earth would never be exactly what it had been, but it was becoming something new. Elena Vasquez stood on rebuilt ground that had once been Sao Paulo. She was 103 years old. Her hair was white. Her face was lined with a century of struggle. She had been a schoolteacher before the war. She had led the resistance on occupied Earth. She had survived everything the universe could throw at her. Now she watched the first colonists return. Ships descended from orbit carrying families. Children who had never seen Earth. Parents who had been born on colony worlds. Grandparents who remembered the burning and had never stopped dreaming of home. They stepped onto soil that their ancestors had walked. They breathed air that still carried traces of ash from 20 years ago. They wept. Vasquez had been asked to speak. She stood before the crowd of thousands and tried to find the right words. "I was here when the sky burned," she said. Her voice was thin but strong. "I hid underground, while 4 billion people died above me. I lived on Earth when it was a graveyard. I fought here when everyone thought we were forgotten." She looked at the faces around her. Young faces, old faces, human faces carrying hope she had almost forgotten existed. "We never forgot," she continued. "We never stopped fighting, and now we are home. Not the home we lost, that is gone forever, but a new home, a home we will build together." She knelt down and pressed her hand into the soil. It was dark and rich, full of life that had not existed a decade ago. "We plant our roots here again," she said. "We remember what we lost. We honor the dead by living, by building, by proving that no matter what the universe does to us, humanity endures." A child came forward carrying a small tree. Vasquez helped her plant it in the earth. The crowd watched in silence. Somewhere, birds that had been reintroduced to the ecosystem began to sing. This was how Earth was reborn. One tree at a time, one family at a time, one generation at a time. On New Geneva, the great monument stood in the central plaza. It contained soil from every burned city on Earth. 4 billion names were carved in a spiral that took hours to walk. A flame burned at the center, day and night, never going out. The inscription read, "We were tested by fire, and we did not break. We were given cause for hatred, and we chose justice. We were shown the cost of power without wisdom. We chose to be better than our destroyers. This is humanity's answer to the darkness. We endure, we remember, we rise." Every day, people came to the monument. Humans came to honor their ancestors. Members of other species came to understand what humanity had survived. They walked the spiral of names and read the inscription and felt something change inside them. A young Valkyrie woman stood before the monument. Her name was Scythrine. She was part of the first generation allowed to leave their home system. Her people had been confined for 20 years, paying for the sins of their ancestors. Scythrine had been taught the truth from birth. She knew what the Dominion had done to Earth. She knew why her people were punished. She had studied the broadcasts that the Valkyrie sent every year, confessing their crimes to the galaxy. Now she stood among the names of 4 billion murdered humans and wept. She did not fully understand why. The guilt was not hers. She had not ordered the bombardment. She had not celebrated when Earth burned. She had not even been born, but she felt it anyway. The weight of what her species had done, the horror of it, the shame. An elderly human woman walked up beside her. She had gray hair and kind eyes. She had lost her entire family on Earth. Her parents, her siblings, her children. "Why are you crying?" the old woman asked gently. "I do not know," Scythrine answered. "I did not do this, but I feel responsible." The old woman took her hand. The touch was warm, patient. "We do not want you to carry guilt," she said. "We want you to carry the lesson. That is why you are here. That is why any of us are still here. To learn, to remember, to make sure it never happens again." Scythrine nodded. She would return to Velcroth Prime eventually. She would teach what she had learned. She would help her people understand not just what they had done, but what they could become. The cycle of violence that had defined the galaxy for 10,000 years was broken, not through greater violence, through the hardest choice of all, the choice to stop. In her office on New Geneva, President Okonkwo looked at the latest reports. The galaxy was mostly at peace. Trade flourished between species who had once been enemies. Old hatreds were slowly healing, but not everything was perfect. Remnants of Dominion loyalists still plotted revenge. Some species feared humanity would become the new oppressors. And far beyond the edge of known space, long-range sensors had detected something strange, something vast, something approaching. Commander Yuki Tanaka II studied those readings. She was the granddaughter of the scientist who had built humanity's greatest weapons. She had inherited her grandmother's brilliant mind and her mother's steady courage. Whatever was coming, humanity would face it, not as victims, not as conquerors, but as guardians of something worth protecting. The galaxy had changed because humans had survived, because they had fought back, because they had won and then chosen mercy instead of revenge. That was humanity's gift to the stars. On Earth, the sun set over Sao Paulo. The tree that Elena Vasquez had planted caught the last rays of light. A child laughed somewhere in the distance. A dog barked. Life filled spaces that had been silent for 20 years. The 4 billion were gone. Nothing could bring them back. But their descendants walked the rebuilt streets and breathed the cleaned air and looked up at stars that no longer seemed threatening. Humanity had been tested by the worst the universe could offer. They had been burned and broken, and told they would die. They had answered with something the galaxy had never seen before. Not just survival, not just revenge, but transformation. And now, as night fell on a reborn Earth, the flame on New Geneva still burned. 4 billion names glowed in the darkness, and the inscription spoke to anyone who would listen. We endure. We remember. We rise. The long night was over. The dawn had finally come.